Ever find yourself cramming for exams, presentations, or work projects only to forget everything the next day? It's definitely a common struggle, isn't it? The late-night cramming sessions, burnouts, the wandering mind during study hours, the procrastination that seems to creep in just when you need to be most productive. Or perhaps you're using study techniques that just aren't cutting it. These are the battles we all face in our quest for knowledge. If these struggles sound familiar, don't fret. We've got some advanced tips that can help transform your studying habits. Tip number 1, the Fineman Technique, named after the famous physicist Richard Feynman. This technique is a mental exercise that involves explaining a concept in a way a child can understand. It's not about dumbing things down, but rather breaking them down. You see, children have an uncanny knack for sensing complexity. If you can explain a concept to a 6-year-old, you've probably stripped it down to its core components, thereby simplifying it. This process not only makes abstract ideas tangible, but also highlights the areas you need to work on. It's a win-win. You solidify your understanding while identifying gaps in your knowledge. The Fineman Technique is a brilliant tool to grapple with complex topics, transforming them into manageable chunks. So, the next time you're stuck on a complex topic, try explaining it to an imaginary 6-year-old. Moving on to tip number 2, active recall. Often when we study, we fall into the trap of passive learning, reading, rereading, and hoping that the information will stick. But my dear friends, there's a more effective method: active recall. This technique is all about actively testing your memory during studying. Rather than merely going through your notes, you ask yourself questions. You try to summarize what you've learned. You force your brain to retrieve the information. Why is it so effective, you ask? Well, when you actively recall information, you're strengthening the neural pathways associated with that knowledge. It's like exercising your brain muscles. Each time you retrieve the information, you're making it easier to do so in the future. It's not always comfortable, but it's incredibly effective. Incorporate active recall in your study routine and watch your retention skyrocket. Tip number 3, a favorite of many successful students: spaced repetition. In the labyrinth of learning, spaced repetition is your trusty compass. This technique is all about reviewing your material at increasing intervals over time. Rather than cramming all your study into one session, you distribute it over several, allowing your brain to digest the information properly. Now let's talk about the forgetting curve. It's a concept that illustrates how our memory fades over time. But here's the catch. Each time you revisit the material, the curve gets less steep. That means the more you review, the longer you retain. Spaced repetition is like a balm to the forgetting curve. It ensures that you're reviewing just at the point where you're about to forget, keeping your memory fresh and your learning effective. So don't just cram. Make friends with time and let your learning sink in. Remember, it's not about how long you study, but how smart you study. Tip number 4, the Pomodoro Technique. This ingenious time management method is all about working with the clock, not against it. Imagine breaking your study time into intervals, traditionally 25 minutes long, each separated by short rejuvenating breaks. This way you're not just studying efficiently, but also maintaining your focus and reducing fatigue. It's a win-win situation, really. You stay in control, your mind stays sharp, and the clock becomes your ally. So, don't fight against the clock, instead study with it. And our final tip for today, mind mapping. This method is a game changer for visually organizing information. Picture this: instead of linear notes, you have a radiant tree-like structure with branches spreading out from a central idea. Each branch represents a different aspect of the topic, and sub-branches delve deeper into each aspect. Fascinating, isn't it? Mind mapping is remarkably effective in understanding complex topics. It presents the big picture and the minute details simultaneously, providing a comprehensive overview. This visual representation helps you connect the dots, see the relationships and patterns that might otherwise go unnoticed. But that's not all. Mind mapping also enhances memory. By engaging both the logical and creative sides of your brain, it aids in better recall and retention of information. You're not just passively reading or writing. You're actively creating a visual aid that makes the material more memorable. So get creative and let your ideas flow freely on your mind map. So, to quickly recap, we've delved into the Fineman Technique, a powerful method to truly understand your studies. We then explored active recall, a strategy to boost memory retention. Next, we unpacked the spaced repetition system, an approach to optimize learning over time. We also discussed the Pomodoro Technique, a time management method to maximize focus. Lastly, we ventured into mind mapping, a visual tool to organize information. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more educational content. Here's to effective studying and better results.